My name is Mara Quinn, and tonight the kitchen smells like pot roast and cinnamon, as if the house itself is trying to convince me that everything is fine. My suitcase bumps the door jamb the way it always has, a scuffed little knock that draws Colin's eyes from his tablet and Sloane's phone from its mirror world. I say hi, set the tea I brewed on the counter, and the three of us pretend for a moment that we're just a family coming together for dinner. Then the pretending slips. Sloane lifts a glossy box of macarons like a stage prop and tells Mom they'll make the table feel less austerely cute. Her voice tilts toward me, the way a porch light tilts toward a moth. Colin doesn't look up when he asks if my laptop is still the same one, as if frugality were a diagnosis. Mom squeezes my wrist, a pressure that says, please. I steady my breath, feel the kitchen fan hum in my ribs, and taste the metal of words I choose not to spend. I work in silence, wiping the condensation off the pitcher, counting the cups. The headlines in Colin's open browser flash numbers about elder care costs, like a stock crawl we can't afford to ignore. I feel a muscle jump in my jaw, the old reflex of explaining myself and let it pass. We'll talk tomorrow, I say. 10 o'clock. Somewhere behind my sternum, a sound begins a private thrum. It isn't here yet, not in the sky, not above the maple tree, but in my memory, the blades are already turning, and the air in this house is getting ready to shift. Morning arrives, with the ordinary sounds that have always opened this house. The kettle's shy whistle, the refrigerator door thumping shut, the distant clink of a neighbor's dog tags as they cross the yard toward the trail. Gold light slips through the curtains in long bars and paints the table where Mom is laying out plates with the efficient grace of muscle memory. I stand there with a mug warming my hands and try to measure how much gentleness a day can hold before truth asks for a seat. Mom looks up a question resting behind her eyes, and I answer it by touching her elbow. We don't say much. We're saving words for what comes next. Colin strolls in crisp polo hair that looks briefed. He kisses Mom's cheek and aims a question at me. Without turning his head, a casual shot over the bow. Did I take the couch, or is my old room still a museum exhibit? Sloane floats a moment later in perfume and camera-ready light, a gift bag rustling like applause in her hands. For later, she says, sliding it onto the counter where my tea rested last night. Something adjacent to help Mom decompress after all the spreadsheets. Her eyes dip to my shoes, the way a bouncer glances at a stamp and decides to let you pass. I smile so small it can't be taxed. We sit. Mom serves salad first, because ritual in her experience can lower the temperature of any conversation. Bitter greens, shaved fennel orange segments that bleed sunlight. Fork tines sing against plates as if they want to negotiate a truce. I ask Dad how he slept. Good, he says, bright with the politeness that arrives when memory travels in dotted lines. It was Tuesday. I squeeze his hand and open a door for him with my voice. It's Friday. He nods, considering Friday like a hat he might try on. Colin clears his throat. The iPad lands in the middle of the table like a second colder centerpiece. Okay, he says, and I feel the room contract a size. We need to talk numbers. I put together a realistic plan. He swipes to a chart that lines the month in columns the assisted living places we toured when Panic drove a cheaper facility 40 miles north that smelled like lemon cleaner and resignation, and Mapleview Memory Care, the one that smelled like nothing except linen and sun. He talks about monthly base rates and tears about medication management and add-ons for wandering risk, his finger tapping cells as if knocking on a door that money might open faster. Mom's thumb rubs a steady circle on Dad's wrist. Sloane leans forward, bronzer perfect in the daylight. I know a place in Jersey that offered me a brand partnership, she says. It's not like sad. They have a koi pond. I let the sentence float past like something that belongs to the decorative part of the world. Colin continues. Travel time matters. We need close enough for Mom to visit easily. We also need to be realistic about contributions. I did the math, he says. And the math arrives with an accent he saves for conclusions. Given what everyone's got going on, it makes sense for Mara to put in $300 a month. Given what I ask and the words shed their coat on the way out. Given the stories we've told about each other. Because they were cheaper than curiosity. I smooth a napkin and nod like a metronome that refuses to rush. Sloane pulls the gift bag toward her as if it needs attention to keep breathing. Also, she says, finding a glossy card inside, I got Mom a day at a really nice spa. It will help with the stress of, Mara's situation. She beams toward Mom. Mom's mouth opens and closes a fish, attempting to articulate grief politely. My breath tastes like nickels for a second and then clears. I set my fork down. I talked to Mapleview last week, I say. The room blinks. They have a wait list and it moves. Dad's intake is scheduled for next week. If we want to keep his place, there's a deposit that holds the room and the assessment slot. I lay the facts on the table like tools in a neat line. No flourish, no plea. The assessment checks his ADLs, mobility cognition meds, how much help he needs with bathing, dressing, eating. They confirm the care level and set a follow-up within 2 weeks to make sure the level sticks. It's thorough. It's the right place. Sloane tilts her head. Did you talk to them as a volunteer or as a customer? Her voice means to be curious and lands somewhere north of that. As his daughter, I say. Dad watches my mouth while I talk, as if my words are fish he might catch if he concentrates. When I say daughter, he smiles. It is small, and it is enough. We eat, or we perform the rituals that make eating look like belief. Dad reaches for the salt and refills his water instead. Sloane lifts her phone for a photo, then catches my look and sets it down face first, like a child stepping out of her shoes. Colin swipes to the slide with the cheaper facility, the one with rose-colored promises, drafted by a marketer who has never had to stand in a hallway and ask a nurse how to make good decisions with a clock breathing on your neck. This one is doable, he says. It's not terrible, and it's a lot less. He doesn't say the thing the numbers are saying for him, that not terrible might be the bar he trusts most right now. Mapleview is the right fit, Mom says, and the sentence lands with more spine than volume. I saw your father's shoulders drop there. I saw the way he watched the light through the leaves. She reaches for the gravy, then stops as if comfort needs permission. I just don't know how we afford right. The words do not cry. They don't need to. The conversation frays and knots again. Sloane suggests selling Dad's old truck. Colin suggests renting the spare room to a graduate student because he read an article about passive income. I suggest breathing between suggestions. Outside, a squirrel rehearses parkour along the fence, and a dog down the block objects to the ambition. Dad tells me he once fished a watch out of the Hudson when he was a kid, swears the river tried to keep it. We laugh. It isn't a happy laugh, but it is a human one, and sometimes that is a rope across a river. When the plates are stacked and the table sits bare except for the iPad and the grinning gift bag, the air feels slightly misarranged, as if the furniture moved while we blinked. We should meet at 10 tomorrow and finalize. Colin says, checking his calendar like it can teach the day to behave. We have to be realistic. 10 works, I say. Realistic is a word that does heavy lifting when hope is tired. After lunch, I rinse plates while Mom dries. The window over the sink frames maple leaves like stained glass. You don't have to prove anything to them, she whispers. I look at the threads of silver that have arrived in her hair like letters from the future. I'm not proving anything I say. I'm arranging the day. She nods, and her hand rests on my shoulder for one extra heartbeat, a small treaty signed in skin. In my room, where the carpet still remembers the outline of my high school bed, I sit on the floor and open my phone. Tess has already texted weather clear. Permit confirmed with the town. Roads on standby. I stare at the ceiling at a hairline crack shaped like a deliberate river. My thumbs hover and then move. Confirm arrival 10:20. Approach from the south. We'll be in the yard. 10 o'clock slides into the living room like a teacher taking attendance, and everyone straightens a little without admitting why. The curtains are half open, throwing slanted light across the rug Mom refuses to replace because it remembers our knees when we were kids. Colin has his iPad propped against a candle jar, as if fiscal policy needs aromatherapy to land. Sloane perches on the arm of the chair, scrolling and then pretending she wasn't. Dad sits beside Mom, a cardigan over his shoulders, although the day is mild. I take the far end of the couch, a small country with its own weather system, and breathe like I'm trying not to startle a bird. Colin begins the way he always begins, with a phrase that has never once rescued a conversation to be practical. He taps the first slide. Numbers flicker in tidy rows, the way storms flicker across radar. He's color-coded the facilities green for affordable, yellow for stretch, red for absolutely not, though the red column carries photos of windows and trees that look like belonging. He reviews base rates and add-ons, transportation, med coordination, all the careful scaffolding people build when they are afraid of falling. I let him. I want him to feel the solidity of having done homework. It's the closest he has to prayer. Sloane interrupts to pull the gift bag toward Mom like a magician's top hat. She extracts the spa card and sets it on the coffee table, angling it for the best light. This is first after she says, as if the afternoon already needs repair. We'll go together. Okay, Mom's smile folds at the corners and holds. Dad leans forward, reading the card like a road sign. When he doesn't place it, he leans back with the dignity of a man choosing not to drive down a road he doesn't recognize. Colin turns to me, not hostile, just calibrated. Mara, before we decide, I want to make sure we're aligned. I've mapped out contributions for 3 months, then a reassessment. Given your situation, $300 a month seems reasonable, and if things change, we can revisit. He says revisit like a promise and a boundary at once. Sloane nods at nothing. It's temporary, she adds, as if that makes the math kinder. Until your projects pick up. Mom clears her throat. We should talk about Mapleview. The way she says should is knitted from courage and fear. I nod. We should. I pull a folder from my tote, not a dramatic reveal, just paper doing the job paper does, and place it on the table. I visited last week, I say. I met with their intake coordinator. We have an assessment slot on Tuesday at 9, and if we want to hold the room that fits Dad's needs, we need to confirm the deposit today. They won't hold it on a promise. Colin freezes mid-tap. Visited? The word rises like a question inflated by helium. Sloane's eyebrows climb. Without us, I choose my reply like a surgeon chooses a stitch. Someone had to start the conversation in a place that could answer it. I open the folder. On top is a 1-page summary with honest fonts and the kind of spacing that lets you breathe while you decide your life. Level 2, memory care, I read. Support with bathing and dressing medication management, twice daily, secure garden access, and daily music therapy, weekly family session option. $8,400 per month before insurance. Insurance offsets some services, but not room and board. Reassessment at 2 weeks. Dad studies my mouth while I read. When I say garden, he looks at the window as if the word itself might open. Mom's hand finds his, and I watch the way her shoulders soften by half an inch, as if the room itself just grew more oxygen. Colin leans in, compelled, despite himself, by the gravity of a plan that already exists in ink. And the deposit, he asks. Non-refundable, refundable if the care team determines the level isn't appropriate, I say. Otherwise, it locks the room and the assessment cadence. Sloane looks at the ceiling the way she looks at a camera searching for the light that flatters. This is all happening fast, she says. I have a content shoot at noon. Could we not do a field trip? Her voice tries for breezy and finds thin. I glance at my phone face down beside me where a silence has a pulse. We don't have to tour, I say, but we do have to sign. I slide a second page forward, the authorization for a family member to coordinate care logistics. Mom would sign primary, one of us signs secondary. It means the nurse calls you if dad forgets his meds at dinner. It means when the world wobbles, the phone has a number that answers. Colin inhales a sound with edges. Mara, this is serious, he says, as if I have confused gravity with theater. We can't just... He stops because he hears it too, a distant chop that could be a lawn crew or a cardiac memory working its way forward. Sloane frowns at the window. Is someone landscaping on a Sunday? It's Saturday, but I don't correct her. The sound unrolls itself, a measured pulse of air, moving faster than usual, and the house registers it before anyone admits it's registering anything. The dog down the block objects again, more urgently. Somewhere in the yard, a wind chime thinks about its options. My phone lights. Test on approach. 1020 confirmed. Town permit active. Roads request visual markers east of the maple. I type with my thumbs and the kind of steadiness that comes from having already decided who I am. We'll be out back. Approach from the south. I set the phone face down, again, not hiding, just placing it where it belongs as a tool, not a throne. Colin's gaze ticks from the folder to my face, back to the folder, as if meaning might change location if he looks fast enough. What is this, he says, flat. What are you doing? The question sounds accusatory and lands in my ear as scared. I soften a notch and let truth stand without armor. Arranging the day, I say. I called in a ride so we can sign at Mapleview by 11. If we wait, the room goes to the next family. We don't have to like how this looks, to like what it gets us. Mom's eyes shine, and she shakes her head once as if to scatter tears before they recruit others. Do we need to call ahead, she asks. I smile. They're expecting us. Sloane laughs, a slice of sound that tries to be a curtain. You called a car uber black, but make it dramatic. The light shifts in the room as a shadow slides across the wall, not quite a shape, more like an intention. The blinds tremble. Dad looks up and his face opens the way faces do when something both familiar and unnamed enters. He whispers, almost delighted Tuesday, as if the day itself just walked into the house to shake his hand. Colin stands because sitting feels like surrender and steps to the window. The air outside stirs in slow circles, leaves and light and the small vocabulary of a yard learning to speak rotor. He turns back to me, not angry now, just raw. Why didn't you tell us, he asks. The easy answer would be pride. The truer one is love with a scar. Because I didn't want to win a fight, I say. I wanted Dad to have a room. The sound grows, not a roar, not a boast, but a disciplined body of air becoming intention. I close the folder and slide it back into my tote. We can stay here and argue about fairness, I say gently, or we can go sign the thing that keeps Dad safe. Mom rises first. She is not fast, but she is decisive the way rivers are decisive. She takes Dad's hand, and he stands because her body knows his gravity better than any plan ever will. Sloane stays put one heartbeat longer, glancing at her phone, as if it might clarify what the algorithm prefers. Then she drops it back into her bag, like a stone into a lake, and follows Mom. Colin looks at the iPad, then at me, and I watch him count the cost of giving up control against the cost of giving up what matters. He closes the tablet. It sounds like a period. If the town complains, he says almost gently, I'm not the one explaining this. They won't, I say. We asked. We marked the yard. We're doing it by the book. He nods once and something in his jaw unclenches that has been clamped for years. We move toward the back door, together a small procession of imperfect people crawling toward the same decision. The hallway smells like furniture polish and the ghost of last winter's pine. I can feel the air outside thinning the way air does when it is about to be asked to carry more than weather. The door opens, the yard gleams. Over the maple, a shadow blooms steady and sure, and the day tips toward whatever comes next. The yard inhales with us as we step into it, maple leaves tilting like small green ears. The helicopter holds above the property line for a count, courteous as a guest, then lowers toward the chalked X Tess had me mark at dawn. Captain Rhodes sits steady behind the canopy visor, down posture like a promise. Rotors churn the air into weather that belongs to no forecast. Mom shields her hair with one hand and laughs despite herself, the sound of a worry loosening. Our neighbor, Mr. Patel, watches from his side of the fence with a thumbs up and the squint of a man who loves an orderly spectacle. I wave to him, a neighborly affidavit. Captain Rhodes cuts power the way a conductor cuts a symphony, and for a beat the world exults in silence. He steps out, runs a practiced eye along the skids, and meets me halfway with a nod that says, logistics, not drama. Ms. Quinn, he calls over the residual hum. Town's clear. We've got a 20-minute hop. Everyone ready? I glance back. Ready is a big word. Willing will do. I help Dad into the rear bench with the kind of attention that turns a simple motion into prayer. Mom climbs in beside him. Colin hesitates, then follows because love has its own gravity. Sloane looks at her reflection in the tinted panel, puts the phone away like a concession, and takes the last seat. Inside, the headsets sit like small halos. The cabin smells faintly of machine oil and lemon wipes. Rhodes gives the brief belt's snug talk button on the left no sudden movements. I rest my palm on Dad's forearm and feel a tremor that matches mine, proof we are related in more ways than memory. The lift is smooth, a firm hand under the day. The house shrinks to a collection of meanings. The river unspools like steel ribbon. The sky remembers how to be generous. Colin stares straight ahead with the rigid dignity of a man pretending not to be impressed. Sloane's eyes go bright despite herself, the way they do when a runway show surprises her with sincerity. Mom's hand grips mine through the headset cuff. Dad watches the Hudson as if it might return something it once borrowed. When the headset crackles and Rhodes tells me we're 5 minutes out, the private thrum in my chest finally resolves into purpose. I lean toward Dad. We're almost there, I say. His brows lift. Tuesday, he murmurs, and I nod. Tuesday by 11. Mapleview appears like an invitation rather than an institution, low brick and broad windows, a garden peeling itself wide to meet the morning. We set down on the designated pad beyond the parking lot where a maintenance crew has paused to witness this peculiar punctuation mark on a Saturday. Mrs. Ortega strides toward us, clipboard tucked like a wing. Welcome back, Ms. Quinn, she says, voice warm and exact. Mr. Quinn, it's good to see you again. She addresses Dad as the subject of the verb, not the object of our fear, and something in me unclenches. Inside, the hallways are clean in the way good hotels are clean, without the sharp lemon that announces an apology. Nurse Calvin meets us near a corkboard, blooming with watercolor leaves. He kneels a little to catch Dad's eyeline. I'm Calvin, he says. I make sure mornings behave. Dad laughs, surprised at the line, and I watch Calvin log that win like a nurse who knows the day is built from small scaffolds. He checks Dad's gait and grip with gentle competence, the assessment already beginning under the skin of conversation. We tour quickly because the point is not spectacle, but fit. Sunlight washes the common room where a record player spins something old and coppery. A couple sways in a slow circle that looks like remembering. The garden braces the air with rosemary and wind chimes, and Mom's face softens into a version of itself I haven't seen since spring. We step into a sample room, bed tucked tight, a chair angled for afternoon, reading an extra blanket stacked where a person who does not like to ask can still get warm. Mrs. Ortega outlines Level 2, Care the Music Therapy schedule, the family sessions on Thursdays. She does not sell, she informs. At a small conference table, the numbers arrive dressed like facts rather than threats. 8.4 per month before offsets. Insurance covers some services, but not room and board. Reassessment at 2 weeks to confirm the care level. I hand over a folder with the Haven Ridge Care Fund letter on top. This covers 18 months of room and board at Mapleview, I say as simply as I can. There's a reserve for incidentals tied to Dad's plan, and a review at 12 months in case care level changes. I don't say acquisition. I don't say liquidation event. I say what matters. Colin reads the letter once, then again, slower, as if comprehension is a muscle he is choosing to use correctly. "You set this up," he says. Not a question. His voice has dropped the argument that usually underwrites it. Sloane touches the paper with the cautious awe she reserves for silk she can't afford to wrinkle. Mom covers her mouth, a reflex, against a kindness too large to swallow whole. Dad hums along to the record in the other room, the melody catching like a zipper closing. Mrs. Ortega slides the authorization across the table. "Primary," she says, looking to Mom. "Secondary," she adds to the three of us, plural on purpose. The pen feels ordinary in my hand, which is a relief. Ordinary is where lives actually change. Mom signs first her name, a steady ribbon. I sign second. Colin exhales and nods, and the pen changes hands. When his signature lands, something in the room settles, a flock coming down to roost. Music from the common room rises and thins, and Dad's voice travels with it, a thread through cloth. We stand not in triumph but in alignment, and Mrs. Ortega smiles the way people smile when a family has chosen the same sentence. "We'll finalize the intake for Tuesday," she says. "In the meantime, take him out to the garden. It's a good day to sit in the wind." I look at Colin and Sloane and then at Mom. The day waits outside like a promise we might actually keep. The garden accepts us without question, wrapping its benches in sunlight and sending bees out on quiet errands. The air smells like rosemary and damp soil, and for the first time all morning, no one is trying to solve anything. Dad lowers himself onto a bench with the slow dignity of a man who knows balance is borrowed but still negotiable. Mom sits beside him, smoothing his sleeve, her face turned upward like she wants the sky to answer for something. I stand a step away, watching the way light fills the spaces our words haven't managed to, and wait for the sound of someone breaking the silence. It's Colin. He paces once, twice, then stops in front of me with the look of a man who has discovered his map was upside down. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asks again, but softer this time, stripped of accusation. "You built this whole thing, set it up for Dad, and you kept it to yourself." His voice flickers at the edges, a man ashamed of the way armor clanks when it falls. I steady my breath. Because if I said it out loud before today, it would sound like boasting. And it was never about that. It was about Dad having a place where mornings are kind. I needed you to see it, not just hear it. I gestured toward Dad, who is humming under his breath to the tune from inside, and for a moment, even Colin can't argue with the evidence of his shoulders unknotted. Sloane sits on the opposite bench, one knee pulled up, her phone forgotten in her bag. "You know," she says quietly, "I only called you poor because it made me feel less hollow. Brand deals and galas, they fill rooms, but not ours. You never played the game, and somehow you're the one who won." She shakes her head at herself. I was jealous of someone I didn't even understand. Mom reaches across the small distance and lays her hand over Sloane's. "We all get scared," she says gently. "We just disguise it differently." Her gaze shifts back to me. "I let them talk that way sometimes because I thought it would protect you from their expectations. But all it did was build walls where we needed doors. I'm sorry, Mara." Her apology lands with the fragile weight of glass and the strength of something that has been waiting years to be said. Colin drops onto the bench opposite Dad and rubs a hand over his face. I push numbers because that's what I know. Cost-benefit risk management charts. I thought if I controlled the math, I could control the fear. But seeing you line up those papers, watching that helicopter land like you'd rehearse justice itself. He shakes his head. I realized I've been managing feelings with spreadsheets. And it doesn't work. Not really. We sit together while Dad hums, and the garden doesn't mind our confessions. I tell them quietly that the Haven Ridge Fund isn't just for him. It's set up to support other families too, ones who don't have a sister, selling code to a defense contractor. I couldn't sleep after that ransomware night, I admit. I saw how fragile systems are not just servers, but people. I wanted to patch something bigger than a firewall. Sloan exhales almost a laugh. You turned trauma into infrastructure. I turned insecurity into filters. She leans back, sunlight warming her cheek. Maybe I need to rethink my definition of influence. Mom strokes Dad's hand, watching the way he relaxes into the music carried by the wind. What matters, she says, is that he is cared for and that we remember we're on the same side. She looks at me, her eyes wet but unafraid. Success is who you hold up, not what you hold up. When it's time to leave, Captain Rhodes waits by the pad, giving us privacy, but watching the clock. We help Dad rise, and his smile lingers like a note carried past its bar line. As we walk back toward the helicopter, Colin slips the folder under his arm with the possessive care of someone finally willing to share. Sloan loops her arm through Mom's, grounding herself in something steadier than spotlight. The rotors spool again, steady and disciplined. As we lift away, I watch Mapleview shrink into its own certainty, a place waiting for Tuesday. Dad leans toward the window, humming still, and I realize the tune has words now. They are indistinct, but Mom mouths them with him filling the blanks. Over the river, with the town spread beneath us, I think about wealth and silence, and how often they are mistaken for each other. My family knows now. Not the balance sheets, not the market value, but the truth of what I built and why. I never needed them to admire me. I needed them to sit in a garden with me and agree that Dad deserves light. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.